Welcome to this week's lecture on Wuthering Heights. Today we're going to talk about the themes or ideas in Wuthering Heights. Some of those themes are, of course, we're going to look at, and we've already looked at love in one of the lectures, but we're going to look at life after death, the supernatural, of course, aspects of the human experience, propriety versus emotion, and of course, as our final idea, we're going to look at just a little bit of revenge. Welcome to our lecture on themes and ideas in Wuthering Heights. As you know, if you look at a previous lecture, you'll see that we've talked extensively about the love between Catherine and Heathcliff and some of the other characters. So I'm not going to focus on that today. What I'd like to start with is probably seeking a balance between propriety or logic and emotion. And I think that's really extensive in the novel and very important. Social convention was extremely important in the time that Bronte wrote, and its genuine emotional response that seems to suffer some kind of criticism because it's not socially convenient or socially acceptable. Lockwood, for example, and we see when Ellen speaks of her views of death, the stuffy Lockwood is worried her thoughts are not conventional, and he says, "Do you believe such people are happy in the other world, sir? I'd give a great deal to know." I declined answering Mrs. Dean's question, which struck me as something heterodox. So anything out of the ordinary is frowned upon. Lockwood is being fashionably melancholic in his approach to life. Ellen is also very orthodox, and we'll look at that later when we see her character. She's very excited when Catherine comes back from the Lintons' place and has met Edgar, and there seems to be some sort of, because she sees Thrushcross Grange as being a very proper place of order and logic. Isabella suffers because of her blind acceptance. She's unable to cope with Heathcliff saying, "No, I don't like you at all." He says, he mocks her marvellous effort of perspicacity to discover that I did not love her. It's seen when Bronte criticises excessive social convention when he makes people deny their real emotions or lose capacity to make them feel. At times, the codes of society are really stifling for most of the characters, and Heathcliff has to go away, of course, to break out of that. Catherine breaks out of it too. Her rebelliousness, her violence, her sort of wild determination and physical cruelty are all partly unacceptable and criticised in the novel, especially by those around her and close to her. Only Heathcliff seems to understand that their passion's extremely important. Hindley is emotionally extreme. He doesn't suffer the bonds of logic, as we might like to call them. So I think you need to think very carefully about social convention and how that sort of is the complete opposite and contrast of the emotional side of the novel. And in those ways, I think you'll find it's extremely important. Now we'll go on and talk about some of the other issues in the novel. So let's have a look at some of those other themes. And I've talked before when we talked about the Gothic about the clash of elemental forces, I suppose, and the idea of the storms and the calm. And I think you need to go back and have a look at the setting and the lecture I wrote on setting to get a full understanding of that. We also, in some ways, see a clash of economic forces and social class in the novel. And that's, of course, extremely important in that period in English society. And the Romantics, in many ways, were fighting social order. So we can see that you're sort of stuck in a class, but in the novel we see it's a very great time of change. Capitalism's changing the world and money's becoming extremely important. Industrialisation changes the economy and the social structure is sort of breaking down. The respectable farmers don't really stand a chance, well, in the novel at least, against the new money of Heathcliff. He's a new wealthy capitalist. He takes away their power through economic means, and it changes the whole socio-economic structure of the novel. I've talked also in the the lecture I did on the love between Heathcliff and Catherine about that search for transcendence, the religious imagery that's in the novel. Both of those characters seek a higher spiritual plane, and the dying Catherine looks forward to this transcendence, I suppose, through her death, and it certainly comes back to the idea that Heathcliff wants that too when he dies, and that he's buried next to Catherine. He thinks there's something there. There's different readings in different ways. We can look at it in a sense of family, and if you want to look at the theme of family, you can say, well, family does this and family does that, and it's extremely patriarchal society. Yes, we know that. The idea of primogeniture was still extremely strong. Males dominate, and I think you'll find that if you look at it in terms of family and that sort of patriarchal struggle, there's something in that for sure. We also see it in that sense of study of family. We see the broken home of Heathcliff, the unstructured families versus the structured family over at Thrushcross Grange, and the consequences of that and the things that brings up. I think we also see, probably as a thematic concern mixed in with the idea of love, is the idea of the effects of intention, of passionate intensity, and how that strength of passion and the idea of emotion is very strong. We also see a sense of isolation in the novel. Individuals are isolated, but settings also isolated, and I sort of already covered that, so I don't want to go that in here. The sense of that changing society can also be seen in the idea of displacement and a sense of loss of structure and loss of order. And I think that comes through in that sense of passion. And you could link those ideas together very clearly and very closely. I also think that finally we need to look at, and as we said at the start, we're going to look at the idea of revenge. So revenge. Of course, the novel, basically, the concept of the novel is the idea of the love story, but underlying that love story is that dominant theme of revenge. And it's sort of the struggle between, in many ways, the individual and their darker side. And in Heathcliff, we see that idea and structure of fighting the evil within us rather than the evil without us. And in many ways, Catherine and Hindley show humanity's dark side as well, but they never, of course, go as far as Heathcliff. And it is Heathcliff who plans that ruthless revenge, that unwavering hatred. He wants revenge on Hindley for degrading him, and he says, I don't care how long I wait if I can only do it at last. He wants revenge upon Edgar for sort of taking Catherine and her part of the misery, and he takes revenge on everybody around them, so his revenge is sort of whole and complete until there's nothing left. For 20 years he focuses on revenge and his loss of love. But we don't hate him for it. We do instead feel some level of sympathy for the character. And not only is it Bronte's beautiful writing that does that, but it's because of his mistreatment as a child, the force of his love for Catherine, and that complete sense of passionate intensity that he has. Many characters, such as Ellen, think he's completely evil. Catherine increasingly begins to call him a beast. She says he's an unreclaimed creature and a wolfish man. And he's just completely obsessed with that sense of revenge, and nothing will stop him from completing that revenge. His natural instinct is to strike out so much. It's a natural impulse within him, and nothing can change that. And I think right to the very end, even though we feel a sense of sympathy for him, he certainly does have that passionate feel about him. So revenge is very important. That romantic interest in that dark introspection and what's on the inside of us is also linked into that idea. So I hope that gives you a general broad outline of those themes. You can build on each of those ideas and integrate them as you develop your own thoughts about the novel, but that should give you a good start. I'm Bruce Pattinson from the Total Education Centre. Thanks for listening to us this afternoon, and goodbye. Well, I hope you're enjoying our series on the Bronte sisters, and especially our feature on Wuthering Heights. Don't forget, if you like what we do, have a look here, go to our website and enjoy the products. Don't forget, subscribe to our channel here, Total Education Media, and if you like us, go to Facebook, press like on Facebook, and you'll get a special offer for discounts on our products. Don't forget, look out for more in this series. See you next time.